And they thought that if they could collect the evidence that I'm describing to you and present this as a complaint to the Maryland Attorney Grievance Commission, that once the Maryland Attorney Grievance Commission investigated, found this clear evidence, that they would be forced to go forward with disciplinary action against these state prosecutors and attorneys, and that once they took disciplinary action, the process is that there would be a federal hearing, and that once you have a federal hearing, the press can be notified because it would be after the, in essence, undercover investigation process, and it would be then known to the public that these state attorneys were going to be reprimanded if not properly prosecuted, okay? That at that point, they figured that we would then get enough attention nationally, etc., to finally gain some justice and get me out. When they presented the Attorney Grievance Commission, there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Hirschman who was the commissioner, and he was soon to retire and in essence handed the scepter over to his junior, Glenn Grossman, who is now active commissioner of the Maryland Attorney Grievance Commission. So when they presented the facts to Hirschman, and although they had a mountain of facts, they said, look, we need to take what is the most raunching smoking gun, and we need to give this to him on such a silver platter that there is absolutely no weasel room out. And what they did was they took every syndicate channel and every journal that wrote an article on the Valerie Carlton case, and they made an analytical chart, and they have what Joe Casserly stated to the press, what Bruce Smith, head prosecutor of Harford County, stated to the press, what the press actually reported, what was stated on the charging statements, and what actual supportive, defensive, or exculpatory evidence exists in public record. So that the statements not only were false, but there was actually even public exculpatory evidence that proved they were false. And they took this and they presented it to Hirschman in an analytical chart and a couple-page statement, and Hirschman said, whoa, and Hirschman contacted Joseph Casserly. Within 2 days of him contacting Joseph Casserly, I had a proposal in front of me in a visitation booth in the prison. And what that proposal stated was, if you state that you assaulted an officer while you were incarcerated, therefore we can charge you with second-degree assault, therefore your incarceration, okay, is not wrongful, because then we can say time served.
They made you a deal.
They made
you an offer
of
time served if you made a false statement.
If I made a false statement, then they would let me go, wipe everything off. And I said, no way, take this to trial, because I will be acquitted, and I will be acquitted on national news, and you will be incriminated. And they knew that the warning was strong enough from Casserly that when I wouldn't budge, they got scared, and they said, we're going to have a null pros hearing.
Who are they?
They are the state prosecutors, Joe Casserly and Bruce Smith, with their senior, in essence, ringleaders being Judge William Carr and Judge Whitfield, who are the senior administrative executive circuit court justice. Whitfield's actually semi-retired, but he still practices.
I'm sorry, I missed the point you're making now.
Okay, the point that I'm making is that Casserly, when I say these people, so the judges and the prosecutors on this case and the head state prosecutor stated, we are going to have a pre-trial settlement, pre-trial to the 28 felonies, and that in that pre-trial, because you're not going to plead guilty on the assault, okay? We're going to let the assault ride, so we're going to come back and hit you, with whatever, trying to make this go by at a later time. And in the meantime, we will null pros the 28 if you plea Alfred a nolo contendere plea on a misdemeanor. What was that misdemeanor? Well, one of the 28 charges was breaking a protective order. Recognize that the protective order was a completely bogus protective order because the protective order was to protect my child against her molester mother, which there's clear evidence that I was not molesting her at the time that they issued the protective order.
They wanted you to plead guilty to a misdemeanor violating that order.
Correct. A nolo contendere.
Nolo contendere.
Okay.
I understand.
What is nolo contendere, if you understand?
It's no contest. You don't contest the charge.
But I'm also not pleading guilty.
You're not pleading guilty. Right.
Okay? So, within 2 days of the Maryland Attorney Grievance Commission reprimanding Joseph Casserly, and we don't know exactly what was stated, we now have a hearing where they're saying you can walk on your own recognizance if you take one Alfred plea on this misdemeanor charge, which I shouldn't have pled because I didn't do it, even on that, and the whole thing was bogus to begin with.
I understand.
But because I was being tortured, and because my life was threatened prior, in other words, I was also told by faculty and command staff in the detention center that if I remained, they would never let me go to trial because they knew that the acquittal would incriminate them on national news. So they said they were already showing me, not just telling me, they were showing me arrangements for my accidental death. Okay? So my avocational team said, you better take that nolo contendere plea on the misdemeanor. I said, look guys, this is a setup. They want me dead. We have too much evidence against them. So I don't know what's coming. They're not, you know. And so we thought that they were just going to wait until the assault trial, which again, we have video, which is now on YouTube. We have video that I clearly was the one being assaulted, that I was not the aggressor, but that we figured that they were going to bring a trial. So my point is that if I'm supposedly one of the most hideous criminals that Harford County has ever incarcerated, that's not something that you would think they would normally say, oh, you know.
Well, I think that anybody would think that somebody had 28 felony counts against them. It would be very strange to get off with pleading nolo contendere to a misdemeanor. So it's quite a gap there.
It's a massive gap. So, I mean, and the fact that it is the same judge who continuously appears in hearings that have such bias and bizarre twists over years. I mean, isn't there some type of a law that a judge can't continuously kind of monopolize hearings?
Well, you're speculating here.
I'm asking. I just don't know.
Well, this is not the place to ask, but I think you should continue with your narrative, continue with your story. Now you pleaded guilty to the misdemeanor charge, and then where do we go from here?
Okay, right. And so they stated that they, being the judge and Joe Casserly, who at that point then came into the picture. Bruce Smith was removed, who was the state prosecutor on my case. Joe Casserly came in and he himself began litigating. He stated that I would need to report to pretrial services because of the assault trial that they still kept on the record, and understand that they first grand jury indicted me for first-degree assault, second-degree assault, conspiracy against the government because of my intentions of wanting to kill officers, stabbing the officer with a knife, and contraband charges for having the knife. That was a grand jury indictment. Yet, at the nolle pros hearing, which they nolle pros the 28 felonies, a completely different case, they also, at that hearing, removed the first-degree assault charge, the conspiracy against the government charge and only kept the contraband and the second-degree assault charge, to which they said they were going to take to trial. So when I left and I went back to the jail and got all my things and some friends picked me up, I knew that it was a setup. I mean, we were continuously looking over our backs because I had so many death threats, both before and during my incarceration, death threats. My attorney had to push me literally out of the way of a moving SUV when I came out of a courthouse prior to being charged criminally. There were plenty of death threats. So I went somewhat into hiding with one of my advocates, who brought me to the probation office the next day. So I get out June 30th, and on July 1st, we go back to Harford County to the pretrial and probation office. And when we were there, they present me with this packet of paperwork that I needed to sign off all my constitutional rights. I could no longer bear arms. I could no longer have HIPAA law, and I said, wait a minute here. I'm an innocent woman. I've been through hell and back, and I'm not convicted. Why am I giving away all my constitutional freedoms? And they said, because that's the process. Because, in essence, you are a convict because you pled nolo and you served time, and the pretrial service has the same requirements than the probation does.